Hello, everybody. My name is Barbara Wilson, and I'm the founder and director of Working with Cancer, which is a UK social enterprise which provides coaching, support, training, and consultancy services to employers, employees with cancer, and working carers to help them manage work and cancer at any stage of their illness. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Dani Binnington, who is the CEO of Healthy Whole Me, and also a near neighbour of mine, which we discovered earlier this year. So welcome, Dani, and it's lovely to be speaking to you again.
Thank you for having me, Barbara. It's a pleasure.
Dani, at the age of 43, was plunged into an early menopause after having a double mastectomy and hysterectomy as a result of her breast cancer, and to reduce her chance of developing ovarian cancer. She's a menopause guide, host of the Menopause and Cancer podcast, a qualified menopause yoga teacher, and she describes herself as an all-round wellness warrior. Brilliant. So, Dani, tell me about your experience of cancer and the impact it had on you.
Yeah, so I was in my early 30s. I was a young mummy to 3 daughters. My twins were 2 and my eldest daughter was 4. When I found a lump, and I never anticipated this to be breast cancer, but it was. And in the early months, days, I would even say a year, it was like life was happening to us. I did not participate massively in anything. I just did what I was told. I underwent all of my active treatment. And for me, that included multiple surgeries, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy. And it was after my active treatment finished, my body recovered quite quickly, actually, Barbara, but my mind and mental health was really lagging behind. And it was when everyone was congratulating me on, you've done it. And they were so happy for me. I had the 3 kids. I saw them going through their first day at school, and it was magical, of course. But at the same time, my fear of recurrence really stopped me from having a decent quality of life, I would say. And then as a result of this and my treatment, I was told I have a genetic mutation that can give me more cancers, ovarian cancer and more breast cancers. And I thought, I've done my cancer, hopefully. And so I underwent risk-reducing surgeries. I had a double mastectomy first, and then at 39, actually, I decided to let go of my ovaries to reduce my risks of ovarian cancer. And so for me, my journey with cancer was a very long, drawn-out process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Something I didn't anticipate. I thought I'd be done with it once my active treatment finished. And in a weird way, it still keeps going. It's still going. I'm still talking to you about it, and I'm 9 years on.
Okay, thank you. So had you had any previous experience of cancer? And from what you've been through, what did you learn about the illness, and also do you think about yourself?
So yes, we had lots of cancer in our family, but it was on my dad's side of the family. And so I never thought I might be at risk, and I wasn't ever made aware of it. So I had quite a blissful sort of childhood and teenage years without the worry. We now know that the genetic mutation does come indeed from my dad's side of the family, and it was passed to me that way. And we lost a lot of family members, 2 of my aunts and my paternal grandmother, to ovarian cancer. So we have a very strong family history there. And they were all very young, way before they even turned 60. And so we've experienced a lot of loss and a lot of many difficult years of living with a cancer diagnosis from a loved one. And then being diagnosed myself, at points, I don't know what's worse. And so my heart really goes out to anyone who might be listening, who might help a loved one through cancer, who might be the spouse, the relative, the daughter, the mother. At times, it was definitely as hard to be the loved one of someone going through it and being affected myself. And so I would like to take away any hierarchy in how difficult it is and how much trauma we experience, because it can be as difficult being and supporting someone you love than being affected yourself. It's, I think, one of the biggest and most important things I have learned. And the second thing I have learned is that there is no end to healing and there is no linearity to recovery. It's a roller coaster. It's an up and a down. It keeps on giving. It comes in waves. And whatever I expected it was going to be, it has never been like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a really big realization that I still sort of scrapple with sometimes now. Yes, I think that was a real big sort of learning curve for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So how significant do you think a cancer diagnosis is compared to any other sort of diagnosis?
Again, I think in a lot of the work I do, and having worked with so many women and through their cancer and helping them navigate menopause as well, I'd like to take the hierarchy out of it, of the significance. And it's something I'm really passionate about, because if someone goes through a breakup of a relationship, a divorce, if someone's got financial difficulties, if someone's got other chronic disease, they can really affect you to the core of your bone. And there will always be someone who is better off than you, and there will always be someone who's worse off. I have some women that really find it so debilitating if they wake up every single night once because of their hot flushes and their menopausal symptoms. And others, it doesn't really affect them that much and they don't need it addressing. There is no point in comparing. It's when it really impacts us and when it's difficult for us, we need help and we need support. And however much or little it is in comparison to someone else, we deserve that support and that help.
Yeah, we're all individuals and we have our own different individual experiences, don't we?
Yes, and we sometimes don't want to moan when time goes on. Like, I felt very validated in talking about my experiences going through active treatment, and we could talk about my loss of hair, we could talk about my nauseous states of being and all of that. But as time goes by, I felt less okay about saying this is really tough. And I'm still really struggling. And so that made me feel a bit more isolated and lonely, maybe at a time where I needed more support.
Yeah. And how difficult then was it, would you say, getting back to work after all you'd been through, Dani?
Well, I think it's fair to say that my own life and my working life and that of my husband's actually changed really dramatically since my cancer diagnosis. And so it's not just changed us as people, but it's also changed us in what we do every day. I never returned. I was a fashion jewelry designer before, and I never returned to that.
Right.
I kind of knew that when I was going through treatment, I thought, I've got 3 really young kids. They are my priority. I really wanted just survive to see them start primary school even. Working wasn't a priority. And then I was fortunate enough not having to work. And then afterwards, when active treatment fell off, I did everything to rebuild my house. And it's where my business name came from. I just wanted to become a healthier, more wholesome version of me. And whatever that meant yoga and food and mental health and all these things I have learned to throw into my toolbox then became my work. And for my husband as well, he invented a new hairbrush. And so his world became different. And so what was harder for me was trying to find a new identity that was suited to who I had become, because for so long I wanted the old Dani back. And now I know Barbara, she was never going to come back. Not in the same way, in a different way.
Yeah.
But once I realized I had input in who I wanted her to become with who I had become, if that makes sense, it became exciting as well, and not just mourning who I thought I was and wanting her back and feeling so different and removed from my old version.
Yeah, it is very much about moving forward and discovering the new you, which some people don't like moving forward and they desperately want to get back to how things were. But I think that tends to be a path that doesn't tend to lead to some good places, because you can never go backwards. You need to go forward. So tell me about your yoga classes and about becoming a qualified menopause yoga coach. And what are the benefits of coming to those classes, Dani?
So when my mother-in-law ushered me to my first yoga class, I was still wearing a wig. I put a hat over my wig because I was really worried my wig would slip off in downward dog. I had no toenails, no fingernails. I'd lost them through chemo. And so my first few yoga classes was really thinking, keep your wig on and don't show your toes off. It was really sort of very difficult, actually, to even turn up to yoga. So I know how that first step can be a big hurdle to even get yourself to your first class. I knew there was loads of benefits to yoga, but I didn't know exactly what there were, but people talk about it. So I thought, well, there must be something in it. I'll just go along. Dee, my mother-in-law, picked me up and dropped me off, and I really needed someone to help me do it. And physically, I didn't feel the benefit quite so quickly. But from when I first stepped on the mat, I realized that this constant 24/7 anxiety, worry of recurrence, heightened alarm bells inside of me, I could quieten that a little bit.
Right.
By the hour that I spent on the mats. And so for me, it was very much a mental health aspect. I thought it was, if anything, Barbara, it was a bit of a release and a relief. I could almost feel I can breathe. And so I thought, wow, if I can feel like that for the hour a week on a Tuesday evening, it was in my local church hall, then I can create that in other places, maybe through other means. For me, it meant doing more yoga and then becoming a yoga teacher. And then as I became menopausal far too early at 39, thinking, how can that help me now in my menopause with my menopausal bones and my heart health and my brain health? That's changed the game. And so what I think I have learned over teaching many people for a long time now is that you can adapt it to what you need, to the stages of your life, to the times of your day, and to where your head is at. And I even run a men's class, which you think, why would you need to do a men's class? But they wouldn't come otherwise. And a few of them often say, oh, thank you, Dani. That's like having a couple of pints. It just took the edge off. It just takes the edge off a busy day. And that's how they explain it. And I know what they mean when they say that. But I think it's whatever you need it for, you can find a class to tick that box. And so it's looking for the class that you need, that suits you in your time with a teacher that you resonate. And then it's going to be beneficial for whatever you need it for, whether it's your bone health or your mental health.
Okay, no, that's good advice. And what advice would you give to any other young woman with cancer who's, you know, having a tough time going through the menopause because of her cancer treatment and thinking about setting up her own business? What did you learn from that process that you'd like to pass on to anyone else?
Yeah, I think first of all, I would love for anyone, any woman affected by cancer, to watch out and think, could my symptoms be menopause? Because too often the association is still not made. We work with people after bowel cancers, after blood cancers, after many other cancers, not just like we think it's breast cancers or ovarian cancers that then deal with menopause. There's many other cancers. Chemotherapy sometimes brings on temporary or permanent ovarian failure that might result in you having your periods back or not. Sometimes it could be radiotherapy and it could be hormone treatment. So it's different ways. And it's really important to think, is my treatment, or ask the consultant, is any of those treatments likely going to put me into menopause? Because that conversation is going to be your starting point to getting the help. Because sometimes it's 5, 6, 10 years down the line that we still need help. It's opening a box and opening the conversation so that we then know we get the adequate help. The second thing is, I really feel anyone affected by cancer who is then dealing with whatever state of menopause, even if you think your periods might come back after chemotherapy, we don't know that. We need specialist care. And it's trying to find out within the system that you have been treated. And that could be accessing a menopause specialist through your consultant, through your breast care nurse, through your oncologist, the surgeon, or your GP. There is a very long waiting list for anyone listening in the UK for specialist clinics, but they exist. We've got about 100 in the UK, for example, that exist. The wait is long. It is worth the wait because often, even years after, you might need someone to talk to about the options available to you. We have specific cases. Treatment options vary from women who are in natural menopause and menopause, and it's important that these get addressed with the right specialist team. And to really be kind to yourself, it definitely adds. Menopause after cancer is the insult to your injury.
That's a very good way of putting it, yes.
And that often happens years, months, and many times, many years after your initial cancer diagnosis. And it can rattle you to your bones, and it can shake things up, and it can make you feel as if you're really losing energy because it can be ongoing.
Yeah.
And so we do need to be kind because, again, the expectation of how linear we thought the recovery would be perhaps is going to look different.
Yeah.
And it requires a certain amount of self-compassion so that we can navigate that within the energy resources that we have, I feel.
Yeah, and managing our own expectations. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, can't we? And we expect that we should be feeling better than we are, rather than, there's no reason to expect anything. It's just the way our recovery develops and progresses that's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, with hope comes expectation, and doesn't everyone hope that after active cancer treatment, we expect to feel bad in active cancer treatment, don't we? We know we're going to perhaps lose hair if we go through chemotherapy. We know we might feel a bit sick and there'll be other drugs to help us. So we expect to feel worse before we feel better. And then we think it's this nice sort of steady climb to getting our old self back. And really speaking to so many people, it's an up and a down and an up and a down. And suddenly you've taken 20 steps back thinking, how the heck, what's happening now? This could be menopause. You're like, oh my gosh, how is this happening? Until we slowly build up again to feeling better.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, Dani, do you have any kind of other top tips to give people who are listening to this call? Any top tips about how to cope with menopause or work or just life in general that you'd like to pass on?
How long have you got, Barbara? How long have you got? I think a big thing that I have learned is, for myself, I can only speak for myself, but for myself, there was not one single thing that was the key component to my healing and feeling better. Not when I was recovering from cancer, and now not when I'm managing menopause. I often visualize myself walking around with loads of buckets, and they could be your Halloween buckets, and you have loads of buckets in your hands, and they've all got different labels. And for me, it's really important that I put a little bit of something into each of these well-being buckets on a daily, weekly basis. Because at first, I thought my bucket was going to be conventional cancer treatment. And when that's done, like my chemo, radio and all of that, when that's done, I'm fine. Well, that never happened because I felt so much worse. So then I threw everything into changing my diet. I went on a nutrition in practice diploma at Leeds Cookery School. I thought I'm going to address it all through food. My mental health was at an all-time low when my diet was the best. So I thought, well, heck, now what? Is this another bucket? And I'm still not feeling better. The yoga came along. It was the movement and the mental health that I thought, oh, okay, I can see a little shift. What that opened up for me was carrying my next bucket. And that was really addressing mental health. And for me, that included counseling, hypnotherapy, and various approaches like cognitive behavior therapy, helping me with my mind, my emotions. And then over time with my menopause, I now need to draw into more hormonal and non-hormonal ways of treating some of my symptoms. And I need to do a little bit of all of that because one bucket alone won't get me personally very far. And so I would say, open up. If you believe in, say you believe in herbal medication or you don't, don't dismiss it, stay curious.
Yeah.
Just because we've dismissed certain ways and pathways of healing up until now, doesn't mean they could be amazing for you. But we need to bring curiosity into our days. And it's the one thing I'd say is open doors, open windows, be curious. Even if you think it's a bit random or hippie, it might be the joy that you need for you to really think your week is improved just by adding something that really fills you up with joy. You know, I'm such a keen sourdough baker, and that is not a healing modality. No baker will ever say, come and bake with me and you will feel better after cancer. But baking gives me joy, and I can do that every week. And it definitely adds to my well-being buckets. And it's become a healing modality for me, as crazy as that sounds.
No, and I think it sounds absolutely sane and rational. I think it's important to always have the treatment that the doctors recommend for you, but that's not the end of it. And I think in terms of mental health, which is very much, you know, the mental health consequences of cancer often aren't recognized. You know, they treat the sort of physicality of cancer, but not all the kind of psychological and emotional impact of cancer, which is immense, and you know, is been demonstrated through surveys that we and other people have done as to be longer lasting and of greater impact. So the kind of things you've done is you're opening yourself out to new possibilities, new ways of doing things. That's a very important thing to do, and is all a part of the process of moving forward.
And you've said that so beautifully when I spoke to you before. You said with the right kind of support, we can be brilliant after cancer. And when I thought about what you had said, I thought, yes, it's the right kind of support, isn't it? So we need specialist support to deal with menopause after cancer. But we also, it's okay to say, I'm still struggling mentally. It's 5 years on. It's okay. And to find the right support. And that could be your friend saying, I'll take you to the comedy, Dani, because I know you need a bit more joy. And it's asking for the right support, even when you think you should have moved on, because it's just honoring where you're at now. And we can be brilliant. It's what you have put so beautifully. We can be absolutely brilliant after cancer, in menopause. And it's a delightful and a privileged journey to be on.
Yeah. Dani, I can't thank you enough for taking part in this call. It's been really interesting and enlightening to hear about your journey and what you've been through. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to end our call now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to share our details. If anyone wanted to get in touch with us, our details are there in terms of website and phone and so forth. And Dani and I also recorded a podcast recently about cancer and the menopause, which you can find on our website. The details are there, and on Dani's website too. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And I hope the rest of your week goes well. Thank you. Bye-bye.